forming on his face now. The unexpected encounter with an old comrade had come to a successful conclusion, but it was now time to search for that girl in earnest. With excellent timing, he heard the announcement reverberating throughout the athletics field. The preliminaries for the middle school participants will begin shortly. All athletes, please report to the competitors area. Somewhere at the far back of the athletics field, which was quiet and sparsely populated, the young girl managed to get to the shade of a tree with some difficulty and plopped down on her butt there. Her shaking hands reached down to take off one of her shoes and her sock. Her swollen ankle testified as to what her current situation was. She lightly bit her lower lips and glared at her ankle, before squeezing her eyes shut and leaning against the tree's sturdy trunk. What a blunder it was. Her shoulder was shoved away by another runner right next to her, and that caused her to stumble ungainly during the race. She somehow managed to pass the first round of preliminaries even with this fairly heavy injury, but now, it was clearly asking for too much to compete again with her leg being like this. I'm furious. Indeed, she was. This might be the last time she competed as a middle schooler, and so, she didn't want to end the day with an injury. That's why, I should just carry on. This was a line of thought that could only be cooked up by the head of an immature middle schooler, who still hadn't shed the mindset of a child yet. And it was the role of the adults to stop such a child from going down the wrong path since the dawn of time itself. You want to hide your injury. The girl flinched grandly after hearing the voice of a male student, walking out from behind the tree that she failed to detect earlier. This mysterious male student didn't look at her, but instead stared into the distance. Even though a certain someone competed in that condition, hurt her ankle even more and had to spend over a year to recuperate, but still ended up as a third-rate athlete and could only regret the decision she made today. The male student shifted his gaze back to the girl with her wide-open eyes and formed a refreshing grin. I was talking about a person that I know. Actually, here was a strange guy telling her a strange tale. But the girl, Cha Hae In, didn't immediately run away from here and instead chose to observe the boy for a bit longer. Isn't he an athlete? A high schooler, right? She could detect a hint of this nice scent coming from the male student for some reason. As for the identity of that scent, the smell of the purest mana leaking out of Jinwoo, as well as her possessing a unique constitution that allowed her to sniff out mana, she'd get to learn about them much later on. As Hae In grew more flustered by the second, Jinwoo crouched near her and carefully placed his hand on her swollen ankle. She flinched again for a moment there but didn't resist him all that much, either. And when his hand left her skin, her ankle was completely healed. She raised up her shocked eyes and stared at Jinwoo. Run without any regrets. You only have one shot, right? She shone so brightly as a rank S hunter fighting against monster threats, but today, her sweating figure under the bright sunlight would shine just as wonderfully. Jinwoo smiled and tried to stand back up, only for his wrist to be grasped in a hurry by Hae In. Wait a minute. Excuse me, have we met somewhere before? She had to work up so much of her courage just to ask that simple enough question that even her neck had turned beet red by the time she was done asking it. Let's run. He invisibly grew confused, but Jinwoo maintained his grin. If you run against me and ever win, then I'll tell you everything. I saw you compete, Appa. I saw you coming in at first place in every preliminary race you entered. Jinwoo smirked and stood back up. I'll take that answer as you giving up. But then, if that's the case, Cha Hae In worked up her courage once more and made a suggestion. The record for the preliminary is about to take place in a bit. How about you telling me the truth when I break that? Even if it's not right now. Jinwoo's head lowered and did his best to suppress his chuckles. Whether she's younger or older, she's still so pure. While briefly entertaining the idea of breaking the world record for the under-18 track event today, he nodded his head, a warm smile filling up his face. All right, deal. Having successfully changed the condition of the bet, he informed a sunny smile as well. Well, you ain't going to be smiling later, though. Jinwoo turned around and left her side for the athletics field while continuing to suppress his chuckles from breaking out. On that day, under the bright spring sunlight, the world record for high school male athletes was shattered in what was supposed to be yet another ordinary preliminary race meet. And the track team Jinwoo was a part of defeated their rival Hwasong Tech High on their way to achieving their goal of an overall first-place finish. Since he didn't share his memories with them, Jinwoo had not thought of the possibility of it happening. But the truth was, there were a few other people who were still connected to the higher beings on Earth. And, out of them all, one person was quite lucky enough to have physical contact with Jinwoo, who was a higher being himself. A certain early morning. "Son, what's the matter?" His son, emerging from the room having just woken up, looked like he was about to break down and cry. So Seong Il-hwan reached out and gently grasped the boy's shoulders, only to be greeted by the spectacle of a different past playing right before his eyes. It happened in the briefest of the brief moments that didn't even last a blink. But that was more than enough to tell the tale spanning several years that felt as long as eternity itself. "I wanted to see you. Always. I wouldn't have minded talking to you for a little bit longer, but I'm sorry for not being a good father to you." His final moments that caused his heart to tumble to the pit of his stomach flashed past his eyes. Then, the time wound back and the memories of how the present came to be played out in a panorama being played backwards. The one and only tool of God that could cause a phenomenon like this, the chalice of rebirth. Seong Il-hwan knew of the artifact's existence through the memories of the rulers, and after looking at the boy's current facial expression, he instantly realized that his son must have had reached some kind of a deal with the higher beings. Indeed, Jinwoo had decided to carry the weight, the cost, of the deal all by himself, regardless of how heavy it was. Seong Il-hwan had to bite down on his lower lip in order to suppress his emotions and prevent them from bursting forth right then. His efforts must have not been in vain, because Jinwoo wiped away the tears threatening to break out and formed a smile. "I must have had a nightmare." At that moment, Seong Il-hwan saw the powerful determination flicker for a blink of an eye on his son's face. But even then, no, even when Jinwoo left behind a single note and disappeared from this world, he couldn't even guess just what kind of promise his son had made with the rulers. "I'd never imagined that promise was to defeat the entirety of the army of the Chaos World all by himself. What was my son's decision? The Shadow Sovereign has." The envoy discovered the traces of nervousness flit past Seong Il-hwan's face and formed a thin smile. "Chosen to stay in this world." He said that every minute and every second spent in this world is precious to him. Seong Il-hwan inwardly spat out a lengthy sigh of relief. The envoy emptied out his cup and silently placed it back on the table. He had to remain in this world until Jinwoo made up his mind. But that role came to an end yesterday, which meant that it was time to leave. Seong Il-hwan would be the very last guest he'd entertain before leaving this world for good. Maybe that was the reason. Although he wasn't really the talkative type, he wanted to converse for just a bit longer today. "Are you planning to continue deceiving Shadow Sovereign Nim?" "No, your son. That's what he wants, no one remembering the past." So, yes, if what Jinwoo wanted was the normal, regular family life, then as his father, Seong Il-hwan was fully committed to continuing the charade until the end of time itself. "I see. Like father, like son." The envoy smirked and nodded his head before raising his gaze a little higher. "Once I leave, the rulers will no longer interfere with this world." "I know, which means this really is the end. With this world." The envoy scanned the interior of the cafe and spoke with an emotional voice. "It has been fun, truly, to be honest, right up until the Shadow Sovereign Nim made his triumphant return. I had been waiting with bated breath on what destiny had in store for us." The envoy held back slightly and didn't mention that even the rulers didn't expect to see Jinwoo succeed in his quest. Well, there was no reason to pour a bucket of cold water on this emotional farewell, was there? Just before he bade his farewell and stood up to leave, the envoy addressed his guest once more. "The rulers expressed their unreserved gratitude towards not just Shadow Sovereign, but to you as well, Seong Il-hwan Nim. It was unknown whether a result like this would have been achieved without his help. He fought for the sake of the rulers, and he even suggested that the higher beings cooperate with the Shadow Sovereign, too. Indeed, his role had been great. The rulers had decided as thus, and they prepared a small gift for him in return. By any chance, is there something we can help you with?" When considering that the rulers possessed incredible powers as well as various tools of God, this was akin to them saying, "We will grant any wish you have." However, Seong Il-hwan shook his head almost immediately. "I have none." But that made sense. The envoy could understand where he was coming from. There was an existence on the level of a god living his family right next to him, so what was the point of voicing his wishes here? "Well, then." The envoy bowed his head slightly and got ready to stand up. But then, Seong Il-hwan belatedly said something else. "Hang on." The envoy stopped and settled back down on the chair again. "Is there something else?" Seong Il-hwan pondered for a bit and spoke up with some difficulty. "My memories. Is it possible for you to erase my memories of the previous timeline?" "Yes, it's possible, but why would you choose to do so?" "Well, it's unimaginably hard to keep pretending in front of a son with an amazing perception, you see." Seong Il-hwan smirked once he was done. Again, like father, like son, his grinning face was almost a dead ringer for Jinwoo's. And, also, Seong Il-hwan lowered his gaze and fell into thought for a bit again, before continuing on with his words slowly. I also wish to become a regular dad who worries about his son's welfare. He wanted to return to being just a simple father who felt anxious about his son possibly coming back home injured in some way, and a father who sighed in disappointment at his son's exam results, a man who worried about his regular son. In other words, to me, Jinwoo isn't the Shadow Sovereign, but a precious son, you see. That was Seong Il-hwan's small wish. I understand. If that was his reasoning, then it'd be no problem. The envoy smiled gently and granted Seong Il-hwan's wish. Once you exit from this cafe, all memories of the previous timeline will completely be erased from your mind. As the envoy began performing the magic spell on Seong Il-hwan, he whispered a goodbye so small that no one could hear it properly. You won't remember this, but still, I pray that you get to live a fulfilling life. The evening of the 24th of December, Jinwoo was walking on a street filled with the festive atmosphere of Christmas. He could easily spot the smiling faces of movie stars or top athletes proudly on display on the electronic advertising boards hung here and there. The streets have changed a lot. Whenever Jinwoo recalled the time when the streets used to be dominated by the faces of top-ranked hunters, he still felt a bit awkward and disjointed. He took a look around himself without thinking too much about it and discovered many young couples and their colorful clothing filling up the streets. Yep, I definitely am an examinee who recently finished his CSAT. Look how plainly dressed I am. Jinwoo lightly tutted at his rather plain-looking clothes and sought out the nearest clothing store. With the time being what it was, the shops were all closed, but from the get-go, he wasn't planning to buy something anyway. Jinwoo stopped walking in front of a mannequin kitted out in the coolest outfit inside the shop window. The pitch-black smoke enveloped Jinwoo's figure for a brief moment and his outfit had changed to the exact same thing as that mannequin's. He examined his new look through the reflection on the shop's window before asking his shadow soldiers. What do you think? Fangs, having developed an intense interest in all things fashion-related from some time ago, hurriedly replied first, maybe fearing that someone else might steal his limelight. All right. Jinwoo's steps became a touch cheerier than before and they helped him arrive at the place of his appointment in the proverbial blink of an eye. Surrounding a massive Christmas tree installed in the middle of a plaza were many people searching and waiting for their companions to arrive. Even though many of them were nervously glancing at their watches, the looks of happiness still could be gleaned from their expressions regardless, perhaps because today was Christmas Eve. Unlike them, though, Jinwoo was staring into the heavens above since he had more than enough leeway compared to them. There were all sorts of ambient noises made by people walking on the streets, but Jinwoo still could accurately distinguish the footsteps that mattered to him. Point 3, 2, 1. Just as that kid arrived near his back, he turned around to greet her. Hey, you came. Hee-in was planning to take Jinwoo by surprise, but could only sneakily lower her arms, looking a bit disappointed. Appa, it's like you've got eyes behind your back, you know. She seemed just a bit despondent, which was rather adorable as well, so he broke out into a soft grin. As the two of them walked, they chose the less populated path whenever they came across a crossroad. Meanwhile, Hee-in's eyes were growing really large after listening to Jinwoo's CSAT result. You got such a great score, yet you want to go to that university. But why? Well, the fees are completely paid for by the scholarship. Plus they are adding on the opportunity for me to study abroad as well. Besides, there is this person I just have to meet in that place, you see. It was at that point that her ears perked up. Wait, that person isn't a woman, is it? Her eyes narrowed to a slit, but Jinwoo found her expression really adorable so he decided to string her along for a bit. Who knows? To Jinwoo, seeing her express her emotions so freely like this, something she didn't do back when both of them were adults, proved to be a different but still wonderfully joyous occasion to behold. Appa, do you remember our promise? What promise? The one about you promising to answer everything when I win in a race. Yeah, I do. Hee-in promptly pointed towards one of the trees lighting up along the street. Well, why don't we make a bet, then? Let's see who will arrive there first. Jinwoo couldn't help but chuckle after hearing her sudden challenge and asked her a question. What is it that you'd like to ask me? Everything. Everything. What you're thinking about sometimes, whether it's a girl or a guy you want to meet in that university, and also, about the time we met before that athletic preliminaries took place. Alright, Jinwoo readily agreed to it and took his hands out from his pockets. The end result wouldn't be affected just because he kept his hands there, but still, he wanted to show her that he was taking this challenge quite seriously. But then, Hee-in had been staying a step away from his position until then, but suddenly walked in very close to wrap her scarf around his neck before asking him for a small favor in a whisper. "Appa, if you like me, don't move from this spot." While he was getting flustered by this development, Hee-in began walking slowly towards the tree in question while looking straight at him. As for Jinwoo himself, he couldn't hold back his laughter after realizing that his defeat had been set in stone from the get-go. In the end, Hee-in succeeded in touching the tree first, and she lightly jumped in the air to announce her victory. Meanwhile, his shadow soldiers watching the two lovers' competition with a great deal of anticipation and excitement began jumping up and down themselves in happiness as well. Jinwoo was left stupefied and chuckled again while scratching the side of his head. He took a glance around the street and approached the tree as well. Thankfully, he couldn't spot a single soul on this particular stretch of road, all due to the fact that they sought out only those paths with little foot traffic. "Well, I won, right?" Hee-in was waiting for his reply with an excited expression clearly etched on her face. Jinwoo stopped before her smile and issued a dignified order to his shadow soldiers. "Shadows, every one of you, close your eyes." While the soldiers were rightly feeling frustrated, Jinwoo slowly brought his lips closer and gently locked them with Hee-in's. The white snowflakes continued to fall silently from the sky. 12 years later, within the ranks of the Central Region Precinct's Violent Crimes Unit, there was this one detective nicknamed the Phantom. The newbie detective joining the squad this year after passing the promotion exam, Lee Se-hwan, often heard this rumor while he was walking the beat as a patrolman. The arrest rate of 200%. The rumor went that, in front of this phantom capable of solving not just the cases in his own docket, but even the cold cases of the past, every single violent criminal or bloodthirsty thug would become a very well-behaved sheep in an instant. To the officers patrolling these streets, this detective remained an object of pure respect, a real bona fide legendary figure. Seriously now, the rumor even went on to say that, although he was eligible for a promotion, he wished to devote himself fully to fieldwork and refused to move up the career ladder. How hardcore was that? Anyone with some sense in them would definitely never refuse a promotion, obviously. In any case, even if only half of the rumors making the rounds turned out to be true, then the mystery cop was sure to be one hell of an investigator. "Hey, are you that newbie joining us from today onwards?" A voice came from behind without any prior warning whatsoever, and Lee Se-hwan jumped up in fright. He hurriedly turned around and performed an excellent salute. "No need to be that tense. We're all one family now, right?" The voice belonged to a middle-aged man carrying 2 paper cups filled with coffee standing right behind Lee Se-hwan. He kindly offered one of the cups to the still nervous rookie. "Here, it's on me." "Thank you very much." Lee Se-hwan bowed deeply and received the coffee. Instantly, he was greeted by the reassuring warmth that was kind of like a phone call from his family he dearly wished to see again after living alone for a long time. "Excuse me, I went to speak to the squad captain, and he informed me that I'd be working together with Seong Detective Nim from here on. I was wondering." "Ah, that phantom is your partner." It took almost everything Lee Se-hwan had to stop the coffee from spraying out of his mouth and nostrils. "Well, we came up with that nickname for the guy because he's supernaturally quick, you see. Dunno when it happened, but that name got stuck somehow and even the folks in other units began calling him that. I'm sure you've heard of him too, right?" "Why yes, I have." Lee Se-hwan hurriedly nodded his head several times. A meaningful smirk suddenly crept up on the senior's face. "The thing is, that coffee I gave you, it's meant for him. Speak of the devil. There he comes." Unable to suppress his curiosity, Lee Se-hwan also quickly came out to the corridor himself and shifted his gaze in the direction where the senior was staring at. That was when he discovered a certain man unhurriedly strolling towards his direction from the end of the corridor. That man is the legendary. Without a doubt, that man didn't seem to be in a hurry, yet he was already standing before Lee Se-hwan even before the rookie could fully regain his wits. "Hey man, going out on a call?" "Nah, it's nothing much, really. By the way, is he our new recruit?" "That's right, he is. His name is Lee Se-hwan." Jinwoo bowed his head slightly to greet the senior detective standing next to Lee Se-hwan. He then spun the newbie around to face the other direction and placed his hand on the completely frozen junior's shoulder. "Then, I shall go ahead and train the rookie." The senior detective with the face of a good-natured uncle continued to grin as if he found something quite amusing. He nodded his head to say yes. Sure, go ahead. Have a good day." Almost as soon as the greeting with the senior was over, Jinwoo dragged the rookie cop he was now entrusted with to outside of the building. "He can't be PS set off about me having drunk his coffee, right?" When that line of thought popped up in his head, Lee Se-hwan ended up hurriedly asking a question. Rather than an answer, though, he got a question as a reply instead. Why did you become a police officer? Oh, that. Lee Se-hwan hesitated for a bit before remembering his original dream, the goal that he had forgotten about while working as a beat cop wrestling with drunkards and other idiots for the past few years. I wanted to catch the bad guys. That's right. Even though they were exchanging questions and answers, Jinwoo didn't slow down his steps that continued to lead the rookie to their unknown destination. And he finally let go of the flustered newbie once they reached the end goal. We are going to a place where we can do exactly that. Lee Se-hwan raised his head, and Jinwoo formed his now trademark smile. It was a smile that eased the minds of all those who saw it. That's why I became a cop too, you see. Just those words alone, and Lee Se-hwan's heart began pounding quite violently. You coming? Lee Se-hwan heard the question with only one possible answer and replied with an excited face. Of course, Senior Nim. Completely pooped out from chasing after criminals the whole day, Lee Se-hwan collapsed on top of his new desk and fell asleep. Jinwoo was planning to dump the write-up of the testimonies of all the suspects they apprehended today to the rookie, but now he stopped jotting down on the report paper and quietly studied Lee Se-hwan, utterly lost to the distant lands of sweet slumber. He said he had the experience of catching an armed robber bare-handed, didn't he? Yup, it is fun training a rookie like this guy. A smile naturally crept up on his face now that a rather excellent seedling had joined his unit. Just as Jinwoo's fingers touched the keyboard once more, he heard the voice of Ygritte coming from his shadow. Detective Nim, please listen to me. Jinny isn't a girl who'd willingly take her own life. Look, miss, I understand how you feel. But I already explained to you in detail, didn't I? All the evidence points to. Please take a look at these text messages. Do they look like something sent by a person planning to commit suicide 3 hours later? Maybe it was because of the fact that the deceased's name sounded similar to his own sister's. For a while now, Jinwoo's mind kept wandering towards the conversation between those two people that didn't seem to be going anywhere fast. The detective, now fed up by this heckling, ended up responding in an ill-tempered manner. Look here, miss. From the get-go, most suicides aren't planned out in advance but are done in the spur of the moment. Do you mind if I take a look at the case? The detective flinched nastily when Jinwoo approached him without any presence whatsoever. Detectives were supposed to be able to suss out whether a person was guilty of a crime or not just by locking gazes with a suspect in the blink of an eye. Such detectives couldn't detect his approach, so it was a small wonder that Jinwoo was saddled with the nickname of Phantom. Detective Seong, I hope you aren't going to put me under the spot here. Jinwoo didn't pay any attention to the plea of his senior and scanned through the files, only for his expression to harden to a scary degree. The female victim was found inside her bathtub, having died of massive blood loss from a large cut wound on her wrist. The knife used to cut her wrist was recovered inside the bathroom, and perhaps unsurprisingly, only her fingerprints were found on the weapon, no one else's. The file also said that, even though the deceased displayed a bright personality outwardly, she actually suffered from depression. Not many other investigators would come up with a different hypothesis after looking at all the facts available in this case. Jinwoo returned the case file back to the detective assigned to the case. I don't see anything amiss. Alright, you think so, too. The detective received the files back with a somewhat happy-looking expression. However, with a hardened face, the senior asked back while thinking, could he be? I shall confirm it myself, just in case. The Phantom had sniffed a trail, it seemed, while looking at Jinwoo's back as he walked over to the friend of the deceased waiting anxiously over there. The senior detective roughly scratched the back of his head and complained in his head. Doesn't that guy ever get tired or something? The friend of the deceased, her gaze currently fixed to the ground, quickly raised her head after hearing Jinwoo's voice. I'm Detective Seong Jinwoo. Can we talk for a moment? Inside a quiet, empty and ownerless home, a black shadow suddenly rose up. It was Jinwoo. He found himself in an apartment which was slightly too large for a woman to live alone. Her warmth from the time she was still alive could be felt from several corners of this apartment unit. The current time was late at night. The surroundings were pitch black, but there was no need to turn on the lights because this was the same as broad daylight to Jinwoo's eyes. He entered the bathroom, the place where she met her final moments. The thick smell of blood yet to be cleaned stung his nose. Jinwoo stood before the bathtub and silently studied the very spot where the deceased prepared herself to die. I needed the actual remains in the past, but now. Jinwoo issued his command, and the blackened, coagulated blood reverted back to a crimson liquid and began trickling again. The blood splatter that remained is nothing more than grisly reminders gathered together to form a deep pit of boiling blood. As if it was alive, the mass of blood continued to seethe and tumble as it grew larger and larger. The Shadow Sovereign, the King of the Dead, then issued the absolute order that couldn't be refused at the remains of the deceased. Rise up. A shadow of a woman, yet to shed the hints of her teen years, vigorously rose up from the thickly coagulated clump of blood on the floor. Droplets of blood dripped from the ends of her hair as she took a look around her expression one of sheer confusion regarding her current situation. Eventually, though, she spat out pained moans. Indeed, it'd be quite painful for her since she retained the memories of her dying moments. Jinwoo used the authority of the Shadow Sovereign and calmed the shadow for the time being. Don't be frightened. He you have now has become an existence untethered from the boundaries of life and pain. The king's calming, warm voice helped the woman to compose herself gradually. Did you willingly take your own life? The shadow woman, no, Seo Jinhee, nodded her head. Jinwoo placed one of his knees lower to the ground so he could match her eye level. He studied her expression and quietly asked her, your reason? And when he did, her lips, frozen shut like a block of ice, cautiously parted ways. The doorbell resounded out rather late at night. A middle-aged man put a photo frame containing a picture of his daughter down on its original spot and looked away. Who could it be at this late hour? He tilted his head this way and that while standing up from his seat, and walked over to the intercom. The monitor on the device showing the scene outside the front door now displayed a man kitted out in a smart business suit standing there. The middle-aged man didn't think too much about it and pressed the speak button. Beep. The man outside the door pulled out his ID badge and showed it to the camera. I'm Detective Seong Jinwoo from Central Region's Violent Crimes Unit. I have questions to ask you regarding your daughter's death, so can we speak for a little while, please? The photo and the ID badge matched the face on the monitor. The middle-aged man forgot that it was far too late in the day for a guest to show up like this when he heard the word detective and hurriedly flung the door open. Did the investigation's result come out? How did my little girl die? Jinwoo quietly studied the face of Seo Jinhee's father, Seo Jae-nam, before shaking his head. Nothing is certain yet, sir. However, I do have several follow-up questions I'd like to ask you regarding your daughter. The father of the deceased formed a somewhat disappointed expression when he heard there was nothing to report yet. Jinwoo made a quiet demand towards the man. Can you come with me? Seo Jae-nam seemed to be in a dilemma, but soon enough formed a grimly determined expression. Of course, if I can help in any shape or form in uncovering the truth of my daughter's death, then I shall cooperate fully. He came outside and locked the door before turning around to face Jinwoo. Let's get going, detective. Jinwoo nodded his head once and turned towards a certain direction. This way. Seo Jae-nam initially thought that they would go to the police station, but instead, they ended up in a cafe near his place. He asked the detective why they had to come here and only got a vague answer in the form of we need a place to chat quietly instead. What kind of a student was Miss Seo Jinhee usually? Excuse me, by any chance, was there anyone who might have been resentful towards? Seo Jae-nam belatedly realized the implication behind the question and hurriedly shook his hand around. No, never. She was definitely not a child who'd go around doing things to make others hate her. She was really kind and pure. Seo Jae-nam replied up to there before his head faltered and sounds of sobbing escaped from him. How long did it go by like this? The sobbing man's shoulders stopped trembling eventually, and he raised his head slowly. I'm sorry, detective. I still can't believe that my little girl left me in that manner. You must have cherished your daughter a lot. Of course, I'm sure you know this already, but Jinhee wasn't my biological child. That was why I cherished and loved her as much as I would have with my real child. No, maybe even more than that. His gaze lowered as he struggled to swallow back his sadness. He continued on. If only she told me when she was hurting, when it was getting too much for her. Although Seo Jae-nam was displaying an intense emotional state, Jinwoo was quite different in his attitude and kept an icy cold gleam in his eyes from the beginning right until the end. He then pulled out his own smartphone from his inner pocket. While we were sifting through your daughter's personal effects, we uncovered a certain sound file. Pardon? Well, let's listen to it first. Jinwoo tapped on the play icon and let the voice of the shadow play out. It was the testimony straight from her mouth about the tale of the horrifying abuse she suffered at the hands of her adoptive father, ever since she was a young child. And as the testimony continued on, Seo Jae-nam finally stopped acting like a sorrowful father who lost his daughter, his eyes constantly shaking from shock. The girl deliberately chose to go to a university far away from home, believing that she was finally freed from the torment of her adoptive father. But then, when the Beastard got in contact with her again some time ago, starting with the text message saying "I want to see you again," she chose to end her life instead. She might have taken her own life, but the culprit that drove her to that decision was someone else. Once the sound file ended its playback, Seo Jae-nam raised his head, his expression frozen stiff now. Why did you play that in front of me?" This middle-aged man could legitimately claim that he possessed quicker wits than most other people. If the real goal of this meeting was to arrest him, then this detective would have shown up with a couple of other officers, slapped the cuffs on him and be done with the whole thing just like that. However, this cop didn't take him to the police station, but to a local cafe, saying that they needed to have a quiet chat. That was why Seo Jae-nam had a hunch that the detective in front of his eyes had a somewhat different purpose in coming to see him. As if to reply positively to that hunch, the expressionless detective finally revealed a toothy grin. "You now have two options available to you." Options were available. Seo Jae-nam clenched his fists tightly after hearing those words that sounded like the heavens extending a lifeline, just as a precariously dangerous situation was about to befall on him. Yes. Meanwhile, the detective carried on. "First, you admit to your wrongdoing, go to the station with me, and confess everything. And the other option is, rather than admit to your crime, you pay an appropriate price instead." Seo Jae-nam had to grit his teeth in order to suppress this powerful wave of jovial laughter gushing out from somewhere deep inside his chest. Oh my goodness me. And the wise old they said that, even if the heavens collapsed, there would always be a way out, didn't they? Who would have thought that the detective who uncovered his ugly sins just so happened to be such an individual? Seo Jae-nam had lived a pretty great life as a medical doctor. So, regardless of how much this pathetic policeman wanted, he knew he had the financial wherewithal to satisfy that demand. Seo Jae-nam did his utmost best to stop the ends of his lips from curling up and asked back, "How much are you asking for?" "That is already enough." Jinwoo formed a hollow chuckle and securely pocketed the phone. He knew better than anyone just how many people regretted with their whole being the choice they've made just now. This middle-aged man trying his best to hide his laughter came across as utterly disgusting and ridiculous. In an instant, Jinwoo's expression changed. "Now, listen well." With the smile gone from his face, an aura so ominous and bleak oozed out from him instead. "In reality, this place you're in isn't the world you were living in. No, it's a different world I simply mocked up to resemble the outside scenery. The land of the dead that no living soul could enter without the express permission of its master, the territory of the eternal rest." Jinwoo calmly added that that was the name of the prison about to seal Seo Jae-nam away. Of course, the middle-aged man became flustered at the suddenly changed Jinwoo's attitude as well as at this strange, hard-to-understand explanation. "Excuse me, Detective Nim. I don't understand. Think about it carefully." Seo Jae-nam felt his breathing choke up from Jinwoo's murderous glare. "Can you remember how you got here?" Now that he thought about it, as the chill ran down on his spine, Seo Jae-nam finally realized the oddness of his situation. But how? Within this brightly lit cafe, how was it possible that there was not a single soul around other than himself and this mysterious detective? Even if you forget about other patrons, no, maybe even the actual owner of the place, shouldn't there at least be one waiter or a clerk somewhere? However, whether it was inside the building or outside of the glass wall, there was not a single trace of other people at all. Just as he finally recognized that something unexplainable had happened to him, everything vanished. Just like that, leaving only the darkness. "Who the hell are you? Is this a dream? It's a nightmare, isn't it?" The middle-aged man pointed at Jinwoo in a confused mixture of anger and desperation. Unfortunately for him, his retreating steps couldn't go too far, because he ran into something as hard as a wall. That was why. An inexplicable chill swept him up and his head slowly shifted towards his back. That's when the wall began moving. No, it wasn't an actual wall, just a giant ant standing stiffly like one, and it was moving now. Dozens upon dozens of ant arms reached out from the darkness and grabbed onto him, before dragging him deeper into the unknown. He would now be subjected to horrifying torture from here onwards, where he'd eventually beg for death. But too bad, he'd not be able to die that easily. See, the thing was, the Shadow now tasked with his punishment was one of the greatest soldiers in the ranks, and at the same time, the greatest healer there ever was, too. This time, not from his front but from behind, another figure watching the proceedings unfold while hiding stepped out of the darkness. It was Jinny. Jinwoo was well aware that, no matter how badly the guilty suffered, the victim's pain would never fully disappear. However, if such a thing could console the heart of the deceased just a tiny bit, now that she was reborn as a shadow, she instinctively understood what kind of a special existence he was. But well, Jinwoo never planned to convert her into his shadow soldier to begin with. So, it was now time to return her to the void. Just before their goodbyes, Jinwoo asked her in a gentle voice, "Is there anything else you'd like to say?" The shadow lightly shook her head before going, "Ah." Next day, Jinhee's friend came to the station in the early morning to find out about any new development in the case. Jinwoo found her first and took her to the corridor outside the office. By all appearances, the chances of the case being treated as murder is extremely low at this point. The investigation itself will close soon, as well. The friend looked at Jinwoo with a disbelieving expression, before speaking up with the voice of a person clutching at a straw. There isn't even 1% of any other possibilities. Rather than a verbal reply, Jinwoo quietly nodded his head up and down. The friend's head dropped towards the ground next. She seemed to have a million things to say in her mind, but couldn't say any one of them out aloud. Jinwoo studied her for a moment or two, before presenting her with a small gift box covered in a cute wrapper. "This is, the name written on the gift card is yours, isn't it?" "It is." It was none other than a gift the deceased carefully handpicked and prepared for the friend's birthday. The gift that would have never entered its intended owner's hands finally found its way to its rightful home. "Jinhee prepared this." "That's correct. I thought that Miss Jinhee would have wanted this gift to find its intended owner." "Thank you." The friend thanked Jinwoo wholeheartedly, her eyes tearing up uncontrollably. If only the adoptive father's insidious text message didn't arrive at the victim's phone 1 hour before she cut her own wrist. Wouldn't these two friends get to enjoy the birthday party as planned? Jinwoo felt complicated in his heart as several thoughts intersected within his mind and his gaze drifted away to the distance, only for him to feel the familiar vibration coming from within his pocket. Later that evening, Jinwoo headed to the local diner that he frequented with Yoo Jin-ho when they were much younger. Still did, as a matter of fact. "Hyung-nim, I have something important I must discuss with you." "What's going on with you? You didn't even tell me anything yet." Yoo Jin-ho greatly hesitated with his reply, before pulling out a small box from his inner pocket and opened it up. A rather expensive-looking ring was stored in there. "This time, I'm gonna propose to Miss Jinha for sure." That's what this was all about. Jinwoo was guessing that the kid got scolded by his little sister or some such, and wanted to complain to someone trustworthy. But now that he knew the score, a smile automatically floated up on his face. "Hyung-nim, I'm really serious this time. I'll confess to her tonight." But the thing is, you think she's going to like this ring? When Jinwoo thought about how Jinha always complained at home, wondering aloud just when the blockhead that was her boyfriend would come around to confess his feelings for her, he could picture her jumping up and down in happiness already. But well, Jinwoo deliberately left his words vague so the after-confession swelling of emotions could be even tastier for the couple. "I wonder, I'm not very good with this sort of things, so..." As if he felt tormented, Yoo Jin-ho dropped his head lower in agony before raising it back up again. "It's still fine, Hyung-nim. Actually, I don't know what she'd like to have anyway, so I prepared lots of presents in advance." And then, he began pulling out a large paper envelope out of the blue. What that contained was a blueprint of a building. "Actually, there's this new building about to be constructed in our company's premises, so as soon as Miss Jinha is done with her medical degree, we could build a hospital." "Hold up." Jinwoo felt as if he had seen this blueprint lots of times from somewhere and quickly cut Yoo Jin-ho's word off. "By any chance, this building, the estimated pricing is around 30 billion won, isn't it?" Yoo Jin-ho was taken by surprise and his eyes opened up wider. "What the? Hyung-nim, how can you know that?" Well, it was obvious how, because it was the exact same thing. The same as the blueprint of the building offered as the compensation for making Yoo Jin-ho the new guild master back in the erased timeline. That was. Jinwoo worked hard to keep his laughter in check. "Listen to me, Jin-ho." "Yes, Hyung-nim. There's no need for you to give her lots of presents to prove yourself so hard like this. Because you are a good man. All you have to do is be you. Just you." Jinwoo's opinion rendered Yoo Jin-ho completely speechless, but he began tearing up greatly. Hyung-nim. It was at this point that Jinwoo belatedly remembered how this kid behaved when drunk and felt this ominous foreboding creep up on him. And like clockwork, Yoo Jin-ho spoke in a tearful voice. "Can I hug you just this one time, Hyung-nim?" "Nope, Hyung-nim." Yoo Jin-ho failed to rein his emotions in the end, and pounced on Jinwoo to embrace him. a certain residence located in the outskirts of the city. Arriving back home safe and sound, Jinwoo parked his car in the vicinity. Although the house was unimaginably huge for a detective to afford with his government salary, no one suspected a thing since the person sharing the residence alongside him just so happened to be the idol of the sporting world that pretty much every South Korean had heard of before in the past. However, only he and knew the secret of this house not being built by the hands of humans. When Jinwoo stepped into the house, the first thing that greeted him was the sight of his two marshals in the middle of a war of nerves. Bellion and Ygritte were glaring at each other without backing down an inch, apparently not ready to give up on their ground. Soon, Hee-in came out to the living room while carrying their son, Soo-ho. "Dear." With a smile, Jinwoo took over Soo-ho from Hee-in and gently held him up. When he did, Soo-ho broke out into boisterous laughter and extended his small hands towards him. The boy wanted to be hugged by his father, so Jinwoo helped with that by embracing the baby against his chest, and then pointed to his two marshals with his chin. "What's up with those two?" "Well, the thing is," Hee-in was fighting back to keep her own laughter from breaking out while hesitating with her answer. But Jinwoo didn't need long to figure out what was up with this situation. Bellion shot back at Ygritte with a harsh glare. However, Ygritte's own fighting spirit didn't lose out an inch. No one knew when or who ordered them online. But well, Ygritte was holding homeschooling material for toddlers as he argued his case. Jinwoo watched the tightly contested war of nerves between these two proud soldiers and became utterly speechless. He stared at them with a dumbfounded face for a while, before he took a step closer to address them. "You guys." The marshals finally realized that their liege was right in front of their noses, hurriedly turned around to face him, and knelt down on the floor. Jinwoo tutted audibly at the two marshals far too obsessed in the matters of the postnatal care, and spoke to them. "It's fine whether you want to teach my son swords or maths, but let's worry about that only after the boy learns to walk first, shall we?" Jinwoo grinned brightly while holding his son in his arms, and just like that, Soo-ho also grinned brightly in return, as well. Around the time Lee Se-hwan, joining the unit as someone's potential successor, had gotten more or less used to the life as a detective, Jinwoo was summoned by the station commander for a private chat. The senior detective leaving the commander's office before him carried a rather suspicious glint in his eyes, so it was unlikely that this chat would be about a pleasant topic, thought Jinwoo. He entered the commander's office after the senior detective left and walked over to his superior's desk. "Did you call for me, sir? I heard that you're still interfering in other detectives' investigations." As expected, the senior of earlier carried that look of "I told you so" as he was leaving, didn't he? Jinwoo inwardly swallowed his fake cough. The commander turned around towards Jinwoo and formed a refreshing grin. "Please, I beg you to not go overboard and make other detectives resent you, Seong Hunter Nim." The commander's face was someone quite familiar to him. It belonged to none other than Woo Jin-cheol, the youngest station commander in Korean history. Of course, that feat was built upon the hidden fact that Jinwoo played a key role in solving many of Woo Jin-cheol's cases. Jinwoo smiled and corrected his current boss's words. "I'm not a hunter anymore, Commander. Even still, it's a lot more convenient for me to refer to you as a hunter Nim." While saying those things, Woo Jin-cheol scanned the documents on top of his desk. "Did you know that the legal guardian of the suicide victim, her father, suddenly went missing a few days ago?" Really, rather coincidentally, every CCTV camera around the missing man's residence stopped working at the same time. "Oh my goodness, how can such a thing even happen?" Jinwoo's feigned innocence brought about a helpless chuckle from Woo Jin-cheol. He then threw the documents into the nearby trash can. "Whatever you decide to do, I shall continue to believe in you, Seong Hunter Nim. Actually, I didn't ask you to come and stop by because of that." Woo Jin-cheol pushed forward a piece of memo paper that had been hidden in the corner of the desk until then. A name of a hospital, as well as a patient's room number, was written on it. "I thought that you'd like to know." "What's this?" Jinwoo asked back, and Woo Jin-cheol replied as if he was waiting for that. "The association president, no, Chairman Go Gun-hye is apparently in critical condition." This would be Jinwoo's second time coming to visit Go Gun-hye's hospital room. About 10 years ago, he saved the older man's life by using the divine water of life that he also used to save his mother's life in the erased timeline. And now, he was facing the gaunt Go Gun-hye once more as the latter found himself at the death's doorstep. Since this was his second visit, the dying man didn't get surprised by Jinwoo's unexpected appearance. No, he simply nodded his head in the direction of the unfamiliar young man with a hood pulled up. He then tapped on the oxygen mask blocking his mouth. Jinwoo reached out and cautiously removed the apparatus, allowing Go Gun-hye to speak even though he wheezed heavily and laboriously in between each word. "Young man, you came back again. Actually, I've been searching for you all this time. Jinwoo looked on at this sight with sorrowful eyes before raising his voice. If chairman wants this illness to be cured, then, even before he could finish saying that he could cure the illness one more time, Go-Gun Huey shook his head first. I've lived for a long time now. I did what I had to do during the 10 years you gave me. That is enough for me. Back in the erased timeline, Go-Gun Huey sold off his company and became the first president of the Korean Hunters Association. But in this timeline, he had been acting as the role model to all the other corporate leaders by taking the lead in various charity work. And he no longer wished for his life to be extended anymore. What he really wanted, though, was not what everyone would have expected. Actually, I have a favor to ask you. Jinwoo nodded his head. And that's when he was met with Go-Gun Huey's pleading eyes. You told me that there was a world where we fought side by side, didn't you? Jinwoo nodded his head again without saying anything. Can you tell me more about that world? I'd like to know more. What I looked like, what you looked like back then. Those might not be the memories you'd like to recall, sir. It'll be all right. I only wish to regain the memories now lost. That is all. Jinwoo confirmed the earnest desperation on Chairman Go-Gun Huey's expression and gently grasped the dying man's hand. When he did, the memories of the time now erased rushed into Go-Gun Huey's mind like a tidal wave. Tears began flooding out from the older man's eyes. Meanwhile, Jinwoo slowly pulled the hood back and revealed his face to the association president Go-Gun Huey. He tightly grasped the younger man's hands and confirmed the face now looking back as even thicker tears fell from his eyes. Hunter Nim, you have. Again. Jinwoo gently held the association president's hand as the latter's breathing became harsher and noticeably more laborious. Go-Gun Huey's gaze shifted back towards the ceiling. I really, along with young heroes like you. His voice now contained traces of his satisfaction. Go-Gun Huey was overcome with the genuine happiness gushing out from the deepest part of his heart, and as his tears continued to flow, he quietly breathed his last. Jinwoo also stood there with tears in his eyes, before reaching down to gently close the older man's eyes. Soon after, the life support machines informed everyone involved of the passing of their patient. By the time shocked doctors rushed into the room, the suspicious, uninvited guest had already left without a trace. Jinwoo stepped away from the populated streets and made his way towards those avenues with little to no foot traffic. Every time the wind blew, leaves that lost their colors from the influence of the encroaching autumn fell in droves from the trees lining up the streets. Soon, winter would arrive. And then, spring will come again, too. Jinwoo fell into a deep train of thoughts while looking at the scattering leaves, before belatedly realizing that his phone was ringing off the hook inside his pocket. The call was from Hae In. Dear. As soon as he answered the phone, he was greeted by her incredibly urgent voice. Dear Suho, our son is. Could something have happened in their home, even though 2 marshals were guarding it? Jinwoo's own voice rose up higher at what seemed to be an unbelievable situation currently unfolding there. What's the matter with Suho? When he did, Hae In cried out as if she too couldn't believe that it was happening, either. He's flying. Our son is flying around the house right now. It was right at that moment that Jinwoo recalled what Yu Jinho said a few days ago. That's weird. I thought that a kid sharing your wife's genes would start running around the moment he was born, you know. He became completely speechless after recalling those words and stood dead still on the spot. What should I do? For some reason, laughter tried to break out of his mouth after hearing his wife's panicky voice over the phone. For the time being, he decided that calming his wife down would be his first priority. It'll be fine. Don't worry too much about it. What do you mean? I'll teach Suho how to fly step by step, soon. Babe, you know how to fly. Oops, didn't I tell her that before? When he was dating Hae In back in the now erased timeline, he wasn't all that adept at flying around, so they used his sky dragon Kaisel to travel instead. Jinwoo finally couldn't hold back and guffawed out. The autumn leaves shook around in the wind and fell to earth once more. After autumn, winter would come, and afterwards, spring would greet the world. Everything had a beginning and an end, and a new beginning would follow after the end. However, oh no, Suho, you mustn't. Clank, smash. It seemed that the winter of his household was still a long way away. Suho hadn't had any contact with kids of his own age until he turned 5 years old. And today was exactly a week after the worried parents decided to send their son to the nearest kindergarten. The preschool educational institution suddenly called her up, asking her to come for a meeting today. The headmistress cautiously pushed forward a sketchbook. Here, would you take a look at this, please? Hae In picked the book up as the headmistress continued on. It contains drawings by your son, Suho. The white paper within said book featured a rather cute-looking ant as drawn by a little child's hands. But why was she being shown this? He couldn't immediately understand where this conversation was going and asked back with a puzzled expression. What's the matter with this drawing? The headmistress hesitated slightly before letting a soft sigh escape from her lips. She then began explaining herself. The class teacher Nim asked the children to draw their close friends, you see. Now that she looked at the drawing again, the ant was standing on 2 feet. Only then did he realize that this was not a drawing of an ordinary ant, but Marshall Baru instead. There are others after that page. When the class teacher Nim asked Suho if he had any other friends, he drew those next. He flipped one more page. There was a drawing of a humanoid figure with a strip of red plumage attached to his head while holding what was clearly a sword, no matter who saw it. Ygritte. He instantly recognized the protagonist of the drawing and slowly held her forehead with one hand. He might look like a trustworthy knight to those who knew him, but how would this situation look like in the eyes of strangers? Her head began aching just from thinking about that. The next drawing is what Suho drew as his family portrait. The page of the sketchbook flipped again. What greeted her next was a drawing of herself, a man that seemed to be her husband, Jinwoo, and innumerable black figures standing behind them. Suho grew up from his toddler days surrounded by the shadow soldiers, and he must have thought of them as his extended family now. This is how we look like in Suho's eyes. He thought that this drawing contained her son's innocent but warm gaze, and her nose stung with emotions. The class teachers couldn't understand the meaning behind these drawings and fell into a rather considerable amount of panic and came to the conclusion that there must have been some sort of a problem with Suho. The final page contains Suho's drawing of his home, and the reason why I requested you for today's meeting as well. What kind of a drawing would it be this time? With a pair of nervous eyes, Cha Hae In flipped to the last page. There was a cozy little house. A normal-looking house was standing erect in the middle of some land. The problem with this depiction was that the ground below was completely painted black. Over 70% of the sketchbook's real estate was dominated by the black color. We've been caring for many children over the years, but never have we encountered such depictions of friends and family by a child until now. The headmistress pointed to the black portion of the drawing and spoke in a calm voice. The homeroom teacher Nim asked Suho why he drew the lower half of the house like this, and the boy replied that that's where his friends, his family, as well as his giant father, are staying. Initially, the kindergarten was fearful that Suho was being mistreated at home, but they couldn't find any evidence of abuse from the boy's jovial, good-natured behavior he displayed every day. Although rare, things like this did happen occasionally. Young kids drawing the world as they see it through their eyes. Maybe it's possible that Suho possesses a great talent for art. The headmistress convinced herself with this and smiled gently. He stopped forming a gloomy expression now that she knew the source of today's trouble, and smiled awkwardly as well. Ah, yes, what a relief that it was not a huge matter. She could finally relax a bit. In the Central Region's Violent Crimes Unit, after the results of the promotion examination had been announced, excited voices began resounding out and filled up the unit's office. Senior Nim, congratulations on your promotion. Congratulations. You should buy us all around, don't you agree, Senior Nim? No, hang on, Seong Superintendent Nim. Jinwoo had to spend quite some time being surrounded by the rest of the unit's detectives, and was only able to extricate himself after his partner, Lee Se-hwan, finally showed up. By the way, Hyung Nim, why did you accept the promotion this time? I mean, whenever the brass pleaded with you to move up the career ladder, you always refused them, so why now? Jinwoo looked at Se-hwan from the corners of his eyes with a look that said, what's so important about that? Before breaking out into a smirk as he replied, I ran out of excuses for my refusal, you see. Se-hwan laughed out loud at that rather remarkable answer. As it was the case with pretty much every profession out there, a detective would grow further and further away from field work the higher his rank became. Jinwoo wished to remain close to where the action was, and the higher-ups, especially Commander Woo Jin-cheol, respected that. Unfortunately, that couldn't go on forever. Hyung Nim, don't you have any goals or wants? I mean, like, better position or making lots of money, that sort of things. Money was it. If Jinwoo said that once upon a time, he made more than enough moolah to BTCH slap a huge law firm and their deep pockets in the face all by himself at a younger age than his junior partner, would the kid even believe him? Too bad. Jinwoo could only recall the days when he operated the Ah-jin Guild alongside Yu Jin-ho, and swallow back the words dancing on the tip of his tongue. Jinwoo returned home earlier than usual, and after checking out Suho's drawings, could only chuckle softly. I had no idea that our son had such a wonderful talent in art. Amongst them, the drawing of Baru especially caught his eyes. There should be no other 5-year-old child that can draw an ant this wonderfully in the world. Jinwoo looked at the drawing in happiness, only to be pricked harshly by Hee-in's sharp glare and quickly withdrew his smile. After seeing her husband changing his attitude really quickly like that, Hee-in just couldn't hold back her smirk from breaking out anymore. She then spoke to Jinwoo as if she was trying to convince herself. It's not a laughing matter, you know. Take a look at the very last page. The last page in question contains Suho's final piece, named My Home. Suho said that the black ground is where his giant father is, so can you think of? Why are you smiling? And no, well, it's just that I remembered something funny. That's all. Jinwoo recalled the divine liege statue standing in the middle of the territory of eternal rest and couldn't hold back his laughter anymore. Tears even began sneaking out of his eyes, so he quickly wiped them off and closed the sketchbook. Wouldn't it be fine to let this slide with a simple chuckle? Expressions containing such thoughts flitted in and out of Jinwoo's face. Hee-in let a soft sigh out and relayed what the headmistress had told her earlier in the day. Other kids are apparently scared of Suho. A little bit of the smile on Jinwoo's face went away, then. Other kids? Hee-in nodded her head with a worried expression before continuing on with her explanation. Their complexions change badly whenever Suho tries to get close to them, even when he has never bullied or shouted at them, but still. Now that was not something he could gloss over. Jinwoo's expression hardened. The previous smile was long gone now. The thing he was worried about had really happened. Young children were incomparably purer than adults. Unlike with adults who, through logical reasoning and studying, got to overcome the primal instincts they were born with, children could feel the fear of death far more vividly. The reason why other kids avoided Suho was because they must have felt the shadow of death hovering above him. The power of the Shadow Sovereign. It became Jinwoo's, and that fact prevented it from becoming a full-blown calamity, but that was about it. In reality, this power was a horrifying weapon that the god of another realm hid inside its most loyal soldier in order to destroy everything it had created. If the powers of the Shadow Sovereign he didn't mean to give to his son continued to grow within Suho, then it'll be impossible to carry on with a normal life. At the very least, there was a need to seal that power away until Suho reached an age where he could exert perfect control over it. Jinwoo's gaze shifted over to all the photos hanging on the living room's wall. The biggest one was the marriage of Jinwoo and Hee-in. Surrounding it were many images of their son, and most of those photos were shot alongside shadow soldiers. Suho and his bright smile, as he rode on Baru's shoulders and energetically yanking on the Ant King's 2 antennae. Suho busy escaping from Ygritte, who volunteered to become the boys' homeschool tutor, and then Suho busy performing a mock duel with Bellion using his toy sword. There were so many others. Jinwoo quietly began storing them away in the subspace, one by one. Dear, until Suho can live among other people without any issues, I'm planning to temporarily seal away Suho's powers and his memories of the shadow soldiers. Suho had to learn it. He needed to learn how to coexist among regular people like a normal person, rather than with shadow soldiers. Until then, just as the final remaining photo entered the storage within the subspace, Baru emerged from the ground after learning of Jinwoo's decision. The heart of the shadow soldier, the one who looked after and loved Suho like his own child, was transmitted in full to Jinwoo. However, the sovereign's decision was resolute. Realizing that there was no way to change his liege's mind, Baru's head drooped to the ground. As the former Ant King's gaze fell, a drawing suddenly entered his view. It was Suho's sketchbook pushed forward by Jinwoo. It's you, drawn by Suho. Easily the best depiction of Baru he'd ever seen was drawn upon this white page. Thick teardrops formed on Baru's large eyes almost right away. After receiving Jinwoo's permission, Baru cautiously entered Suho's room. The soft, rhythmic breathing of the deeply asleep Suho was like the sweetest and most soothing music to the former Ant King's ears. He knelt down cautiously next to the bed, so as to not rouse the sleeping child from his nap. His voice gently reverberated as if it was spoken within the dreams. In his sleep, Suho shifted his body towards the location of the voice and mumbled softly, boss ant," with an expression showing how proud he was of Suho now being able to pronounce ant more concisely compared to when the child was still chasing after him a couple of years ago. Baru bade his goodbye. Baru lightly kissed the back of Suho's hand perched at the end of the bed and stood back up. All the soldiers hidden within the former Ant King's shadow also said their goodbyes. With the goodbyes now over, Baru looked behind him. Jinwoo was there, nodding his head. He wordlessly walked over to his son and carefully pulled the blanket up to the boy's chest, tucking him in. Then, he placed his palm on the sleeping child's forehead. Powerful magical energy very briefly hovered near his fingertips before leaving him behind. When Suho opens his eyes again, all of his extraordinary power and memories would be gone. Have a good dream, son. Jinwoo lightly kissed his son slumbering away like a baby angel and left the room, quietly closing the door behind him. That night, Suho dreamed of ants and knights and orcs dancing happily together with him. Baek Yunho spat out a low sigh, his face a mess of black soot and dirt. Phew, not too long ago, he and his crew managed to put out a massive wildfire raging near a residential area. This victory came about after over 50 fire engines and firefighting helicopters, as well as 800 or so brave firefighters had been mobilized. Baek Yunho took a look around him. He could see his fatigued colleagues lying or squatting on the ground here and there. However, not one of them carried gloomy expressions. Some of them grinned brightly or raised their thumbs up real high when their gazes met. Ouch, that's cold. He got startled by the sudden coldness touching his neck skin and took a look to his side to find Captain Seong-il Hwan holding a bottle of ice-cold water. Thank you, sir. Baek Yunho bowed his head slightly and took over the water bottle. Seong-il Hwan settled down next to him and wetted his throat with a different bottle. The veteran of 100 battles, or the greatest captain in history. Didn't matter what you called him, it didn't sound ill-fitting with Captain Seong. And as his nickname had alluded to, he had displayed unparalleled brilliance in today's event, too. Baek Yunho was proud to be in the same crew as Seong-il Hwan. Heck, all these bits of soot stuck on his face felt like medals of honor to him, even. One day, he sneaked a glance at his respected senior from the corners of his eyes, before pouring down the remaining cold water over his head. Inside a conference chamber located on the top floor of a certain high-rise building. Chairman. Sir, are you all right? Yu Jinho barely managed to suppress the corners of his lips trying to rise up to the heavens above. What were we talking about just now? Sir, we were informing you that we need to come up with a new title for the virtual reality video game our company is about to publish. That's right. Right? Yu Jinho nodded his head, but then couldn't hold it back anymore and shot up from his seat to loudly cry out towards his employees. Everyone, my wife is pregnant. It's already the 6th week, apparently. His face was filled with an uncontrollable amount of joy right now. The inside of the conference chamber was filled with a sudden silence, but that lasted only for a brief while. Soon, documents were flying in the air, and at the same time, employees were crying out in cheer as well. Congratulations, sir. Congrats, sir. Finally, our chairman has become a father. Yu Jinho did a lap around the conference chamber and high-fived all of his employees, jumping up and down in joy as if this news concerned themselves. His absolutely lovely wife, his soon-to-be-born baby, and his game development company that was making a killing year after year. How could the world be this beautiful to his eyes right now? Yacht. During the middle of his lap of celebration, Yu Jinho had a moment of sudden, powerful inspiration. The beautiful world. Quite obviously, the gazes of all the employees gathered on him. That will be the title of our new game. Let's go with the beautiful world. The joy-filled conference chamber was enveloped in a sudden bout of silence. Are you serious, sir? Yu Jinho replied without a moment's hesitation. Of course. The name Beautiful World fits our game that will virtually recreate reality as close as it can. So, sir, you should rethink this. The fate of our company hangs in the balance with this game. I mean, it's not really a beautiful world, is it, sir? You're being too much, you know. Even though his naming sense was being mercilessly shot down and trampled on by his employees, Yu Jinho still felt really happy regardless. Fine, what if I'm no good with naming stuff? The world is still really beautiful and all, isn't it? Yu Jinho stared outside the window as the sunlight poured in through the glass and muttered to himself. In that case, should I ask Jinwoo Cha for the baby's name instead? The chairman's office of the Yujin Construction was filled with the sounds of a pair of scissors cutting through a newspaper. Chairman Yu Myung-han only raised his head after he was finished with decorating his scrapbook's pages. Were there any other articles? Secretary Kim, one of his hands full of newspapers, shook his head side to side. I see. Chairman Yu Myung-han closed the scrapbook, his current expression filled with dissatisfaction. He rejected the position I created for him, and he instead starts a game company, of all things. Secretary Kim wordlessly glanced at the corner of the chairman's desk. That was where he could see the thick pile of newspapers with all the articles related to Yu Jinho cut out. More than that, they were worked on personally by none other than the chairman himself, too. On a peaceful stretch of a road after school, Suho had grown close to the girl from the same class before long, And now, he found himself in the midst of an important challenge to decide who'd get to carry the school bags home with her. Rock, paper. The girl's look of concentration only added to the weightiness of this confrontation. And the hour of judgment soon arrived. Scissors. The girl went with rock, so Suho had to change his original choice of paper to scissors at the last second. This was the combined effort of his extraordinary dynamic vision and motor reflexes. Heck yeah. The female student celebrated her victory and, while forming a pleased expression, pushed forward her school bag. Suho smirked softly and slung the bag over his other shoulder. You know, you really suck at rock, paper, scissors. Tell me about it. What will we do with a guy who sucks at it so bad? I'll just learn it from you, that's all. Suho smiled and strode forward while carrying bags on both of his shoulders. Wait for me. The two of them chatted about this and that as they walked side by side on a quiet back street. But, out of the blue, Suho stopped walking and raised his head up towards the sky. The girl followed suit and also looked up, but she couldn't see anything else other than the floating clouds silently drifting away as if they were spectating on the two teenagers. What's wrong? Is there something up there? Suho stared at the sky for a while before looking back at the girl with a light chuckle. Nah, it's nothing. A sky dragon flew freely and unrestricted in the air, while screeching out joyously. He, in riding on the creature's back, asked in a worried voice, Dear, will this really be alright? Yup, it's fine. Jinwoo went on to explain that he used magic to erase all presence of their ride, Kaisel, so no one should be able to hear or see them flying. Hold on tight, okay. He heard her husband's smile-filled advice and her arms tightly wrapped around his waist gained renewed strength. Taking that as the go-ahead, Jinwoo immediately raised their traveling speed. Kaisel's wing speed increased noticeably and they rose higher and higher until they broke past the layer of heavenly clouds above. He leaned her head against her husband's shoulder and watched this mesmerizing spectacle unfold in this quiet, still sky, a warm smile floating up on her lips. Jinwoo had been waiting for this chance, so he quickly seized it and pulled out the present he had readied earlier. Her eyes grew large after seeing it. Dear, it was a special necklace he asked the bearded dwarves to craft, as those guys happened to be rather handy with things like this. Jinwoo gently placed the beautiful necklace shimmering under the sun's rays around the neck of his wife. The shadow soldiers watching and cheering on from his shadow all roared out in exhilaration at this wonderful conclusion of their liege perfect wedding anniversary event. Unfortunately, just before Jinwoo's and Hyun's lips, gradually closing in, could bridge the last couple of inches, he had to break the mood first and speak to her instead. Dear, looks like you'll have to go back first and wait for me. I'll be home as soon as possible. This was already their 16th wedding anniversary, so Hyun knew oh so well what was going on when Jinwoo said those things. Come home soon, okay. Jinwoo nodded his head and issued a new order to Kaisel. The sky dragon changed his heading towards Earth and quickly distanced itself. He wordlessly watched the back of his wife getting further away before turning around. Sure enough, a part of the space in the distance began distorting and tearing up before icy blue fog began oozing out from there. It emerged after disintegrating the wall between dimensions and revealed itself, before coagulating in one point to form a large figure. Jinwoo recalled what the envoy of the rulers had told him all those years ago. He said that an existence possessing great power can act like a magnet and attract horrifying beings from other worlds, didn't he? There was no need to question just who that blue fog monster came to visit today. The tier in space grew, so did the number of blue fog clusters at an alarming rate. Hundreds, a few thousands, it could even be a few tens of thousands. Just as he would do, Jinwoo closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Would his son take over this role in the future? Who knows? But when Jinwoo pictured that scene in his head, he realized that it wouldn't be so bad at all. A father and son duo facing off against enemies together. As a grin formed on his lips, he opened his eyes. The countless blue fog clusters had completely emerged from the gap in dimensions, and, upon discovering Jinwoo's presence, began emitting intense, horrifying malice towards him. The electrifying tension felt just before the battle traveled from the tip of his toes to the rest of his body. Nice. His own preparation was now complete, and eventually, those things that acted under one will chose to eliminate the detected threat. As they moved towards Jinwoo's location, he spoke with a smile on his face. Rise up. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.